Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a deep, honest, and clear-eyed look at what many analysts are calling one of the most punishing and decisive operations of the war. Russia's brute force offensive toward Pokrovsk, and what the truth behind this push really is. There has been a lot of noise, a lot of claims, and a lot of political messaging from both sides, so this breakdown is focused on clarity, facts, strategic context, and what this offensive means in the bigger picture. Pokrovsk has become one of the most strategically sensitive cities in eastern Ukraine. It isn't just another frontline settlement. It sits at an intersection of critical supply routes, railway lines, and logistical pathways that support Ukrainian defenses further east. For months, Russia has been shifting more troops, more artillery, more drones, and more resources into this axis, clearly signaling that this is not a diversion, but a very real and very deliberate attempt to shift the momentum of the war. The offensive has been characterized by extremely heavy shelling, advances by infantry, infiltration tactics, and attempts to choke off Ukrainian logistics. Rather than rely only on armored spearheads like in earlier phases of the war, Russian forces here appear to be focusing on a slow, grinding, attritional approach, one that aims to degrade Ukrainian manpower, weaken defensive positions, and isolate pockets of Ukrainian troops before launching deeper urban assaults. Ukrainian defenders in the area have been dealing with immense pressure. Some units have been rotated out after sustaining high casualties, while others remain entrenched in defensive positions that have been hammered by artillery for weeks on end. Despite the pressure, Ukrainian forces continue to attempt counterattacks, particularly at night or during moments when Russian units appear overstretched or exposed. In many ways, this offensive is a test of endurance. On the Russian side, it is a test of how effectively they can sustain manpower, heavy operations, maintain logistical lines, and coordinate multi-directional offensives. On the Ukrainian side, it is a test of whether defensive lines can hold, whether reinforcements can arrive in time, and whether the army can continue to maintain cohesion under prolonged assault. The battle for Pokrovsk is not happening in isolation. It is part of a broader Russian strategy that aims to create pressure along multiple sectors in the Donetsk region. By pushing toward key logistical hubs, Russia is attempting to force Ukraine to redeploy troops from other fronts, potentially opening vulnerabilities elsewhere. If Pokrovsk becomes cut off or falls, it could trigger a cascading series of defensive withdrawals that might reshape the front line dramatically. One of the defining characteristics of this offensive has been Russia's massive use of drones. Reconnaissance drones have been constantly surveilling Ukrainian positions, while loitering munitions have been used to target armor, artillery, and even infantry groups maneuvering between positions. Drone warfare has changed the battlefield, making it significantly harder for either side to move without being detected or targeted within minutes. On the ground, Russian infantry units are advancing in relatively small assault groups, often supported by sappers and drone operators. These units attempt to infiltrate vulnerable points in Ukrainian defenses, sometimes bypassing stronger fortifications entirely and attempting to reach deeper tactical positions. It is a dangerous method, often resulting in high casualties, but it also increases the chances of breakthroughs in sectors where defenders are thinly spread. Urban fighting is another major component of this offensive. As Russian forces push closer to the outskirts of Pokrovsk, they encounter the harsh realities of close quarters combat. Every building, every intersection, every basement becomes contested ground. Ukrainian snipers, anti-armor teams, and entrenched units use the environment to their advantage, slowing Russian advances and inflicting losses. Both sides understand the symbolic weight of this fight. For Russia, capturing a city as significant as Pokrovsk would be a major propaganda victory and a demonstration of operational success. For Ukraine, holding the city is not just about defending territory. It is about maintaining the integrity of supply lines that support tens of thousands of soldiers further east. As pressure escalates, reports from the front indicate that Ukrainian units have increasingly struggled with manpower shortages. Many brigades have been fighting continuously for months, leading to exhaustion, injuries, and reduced troop numbers. Although reinforcements do arrive, they often face the same challenges: intense artillery fire, limited cover, and constant drone surveillance. Despite these challenges, Ukrainian defenders continue to mount determined resistance. Russia, meanwhile, appears to have massed a significant number of troops for this operation. By concentrating manpower and firepower, they aim to overwhelm Ukrainian defenses through sustained pressure rather than rapid maneuver. This approach mirrors earlier successful Russian offensives in other sectors, where slow, methodical advances eventually wore down Ukrainian lines. Artillery plays a central role in Russia's strategy. Heavy bombardment precedes most assaults, with Russian guns targeting defensive trenches, communication lines, ammunition depots, and roads leading into the city. The goal is simple: make it as difficult as possible for Ukraine to move supplies, reinforce positions, or rotate units. Another element of Russia's strategy appears to involve attempts to encircle the city. Rather than charging directly through heavily defended streets, Russian forces are trying to advance from different directions, hoping to tighten a noose around Pokrovsk. If both northern and southern axes meet, Ukrainian forces inside the city could be cut off from resupply or reinforcement, forcing a withdrawal or risking encirclement. However, Ukraine is not passive in this scenario. Ukrainian commanders have been reinforcing certain sectors, constructing new defensive lines, and attempting counterattacks to push Russian forces back from critical roads. Even under pressure, Ukrainian troops are adapting, using mobility and precision strikes to exploit any Russian vulnerabilities. In the midst of this fighting, civilians in Pokrovsk and surrounding areas face tremendous hardship. Many have fled, but some remain, seeking shelter in basements or makeshift bunkers. The continued destruction of infrastructure, power stations, water pumps, residential buildings, has turned large parts of the region into devastated landscapes. Humanitarian needs are rising even as access becomes more difficult. The psychological impact of this offensive is significant. For Ukrainian troops, holding ground under constant bombardment can take a heavy toll. For Russian troops, advancing into fortified positions in urban terrain also carries immense stress, as casualties mount and progress is slow. Yet both sides persist, driven by strategic necessity and national determination. What makes this offensive especially dangerous is the possibility of a broader regional shift. If Pokrovsk becomes untenable for Ukraine, the front could be forced to retreat to secondary, defensive lines further west. Such a move would extend the conflict into new territory and potentially expose additional Ukrainian logistics hubs to Russian attack. Conversely, if Ukraine manages to stabilize the lines around Pokrovsk and prevent encirclement, it could blunt the momentum of Russia's assault and set the stage for future counteroffensives. International reactions have varied. Western analysts warn that the outcome of this battle will heavily influence the next phase of the war. Support for Ukraine continues, but the intensity of fighting around Pokrovsk has highlighted ongoing challenges, ammunition shortages, the need for more trained infantry, and the importance of air defense against drones and missiles. For Russia, this offensive is an opportunity to demonstrate that they can still achieve large-scale territorial gains even after years of war. Political leaders have emphasized Pokrovsk as a key objective, and Russian media portrays the operation as a sign of momentum. Whether this narrative aligns with reality depends entirely on developments on the ground. The truth, however, is that the situation remains fluid. Some days Russia makes noticeable tactical gains. Other days, Ukrainian forces push them back or stabilize the lines. Progress by either side is measured in meters, not kilometers, a sign of how intense and closely contested the battle is. As the offensive continues, both armies are learning, adapting, and reacting. Ukraine is increasing the use of small drones for reconnaissance and strike missions. Russia is adjusting tactics to reduce losses in assault units. Both sides are entrenched in a war where technology, manpower, and strategy blend into a constantly shifting landscape. One thing remains clear. The battle for Pokrovsk is one of the harshest tests either army has faced. It reflects the evolution of the conflict, the growing importance of logistics, and the difficulty of achieving decisive breakthroughs in a heavily fortified and heavily monitored battlefield. Looking ahead, the outcome depends on several factors. Can Ukrainian forces continue to reinforce their lines and prevent encirclement? Can Russia sustain its manpower levels and maintain pressure long enough to force a withdrawal? Will international support shift in ways that alter the balance? And perhaps most importantly, how long can both sides endure the enormous cost of such grinding warfare? Regardless of the outcome, this offensive will shape the narrative of the war. It will influence strategic decisions in the months to come, and it will serve as a reminder of how costly and difficult modern warfare has become, especially in regions where logistics, terrain, and fortifications make every advance a major undertaking. Yet through it all, one thing is certain: the fight for Pokrovsk is far from over. The city stands as a symbol of resistance, strategy, and the incredible resilience of the soldiers on both sides. For Ukraine, it represents a critical lifeline and a defensive anchor. For Russia, it represents a decisive objective whose capture could alter the course of the war. Thank you for staying with me through this in-depth explanation. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts below. Do you think Pokrovsk will hold, or is it at risk of falling? What do you think the next phase of this conflict will look like? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.